afternoon, welcome to the UK Column Live. Half an hour later than usual due to some technical issues with the streaming. Myself and Brian are here as always. Afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
What's the weather doing, Brian?
It's absolutely beautiful, lovely day in Plymouth. We're going to give a long range forecast today. Yesterday we had sunshine, we had some rain. So the long range UK Column Live forecast for tomorrow is the same, sunshine, maybe some rain.
Okay, getting started. Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Sorry, Mike.
We're not having a good day.
We're not.
Okay.
Yesterday, there was a shooting up in Manchester.
Yeah, tragic.
Very tragic, with two lady police officers. I know we do give the police a bit of a hard time, but we do say there are good officers, and these two young ladies were just going about their duties and were tragically shot dead.
Yeah, we should be able to see them on screen. There we are.
Yeah, and it's WPC Fiona Bone and WPC Nicola Hughes. They were shot dead at point blank range in a haul of 13 bullets, followed by a grenade explosion. Yeah,
well, we've got to say that obviously they're doing out on the streets. The police are doing a very dangerous job, and it's enormous credit to the police officers that are serving out there. Tragic what's happened. I think what we are going to see occur now is that we're going to see more and more organisations and agencies calling for the police to be armed.
Absolutely.
I still believe that this is a very serious debate that needs to be considered very carefully, because the facts are that we've at the moment got no control of the UK borders. The government has admitted that 150,000 people are actually missing. I know you're
I'm going to be talking about that. I think it's about 157,000 actually.
So we've got the situation where we've totally released control over our borders, which of course is a sop to the European Union. We've allowed in people with absolutely no vetting as to who they are, whether they've come here to live and work peacefully or they've come from a gang culture in Eastern Europe, for example. So we have brought the gun culture into Britain, and now the police are being put in the front line and obviously are suffering from people using weapons. Yeah,
the gentleman that's the suspect was already being hunted in connection with the deaths of a father and son in separate attacks, but apparently he went into the police station yesterday and gave himself up, and Association of Chief of Police, Sir Hugh Ord, has said guns don't necessarily solve the problem. You only have to look at American experience. Many colleagues in America are lost without even drawing their gun at close range. But I mean, we know at the moment that that's what's trying to go on in America, for them to be disarmed over there.
Well, I think we could say that Sir Hugh Ord is in danger of being hypocritical here, because we've seen over the last few years that the police have actually taken control of tens of thousands. I think the figure is 63,000 automatic weapons. So at the moment there is a culture, which of course is coming through the government, but the Association of Chief Police Officers is pushing it, where we have Britain's police were respected for being unarmed, and that showed, you know, they were vulnerable, so it was respect which was driving how they could police, and now we're seeing Britain's police being turned into a paramilitary force.
Absolutely.
And of course they're being overtaken, so it's worse than that. They're being overtaken by private security companies, and of course the Association of Chief Police Officers have been absolutely behind this this amazing change in the face of British police. But nevertheless, condolences to families of those two officers.
Absolutely.
Well, on the subject of brave people, we must put up this morning this gentleman, the Labour MP for Newport West, has done something extraordinary. He's told the truth in the Commons. And his reward for that, of course, is to have been thrown out. So I have previously been on record as saying that I don't believe that there are any honest and upstanding MPs. So I'm very happy that this gentleman has proved me wrong. But what he was actually saying was that the Defence Secretary was lying, his words were, well, I'll read you this is part of the Telegraph article. The Labour MP was ordered to leave the chamber and suspended from the Commons for 24 hours after comparing statements given by Philip Hammond, the Defence Secretary, and his ministerial team to the First World War, when politicians lied and soldiers died. So John Bercow, of course, the upstanding Speaker of the Commons, told him that he was behaving in a grossly disorderly manner. That's telling the truth. That's Mr. Bercow's description of the truth. And the Defence Secretary said the claims were scandalous. But the Newport MP refused to withdraw his comments. Now, what he was actually talking about is the fact that at the moment, crass government policy in Afghanistan is putting troops at direct risk from being, and I think the right word is murdered by their Afghan colleagues. There's been a total of 51 shooting incidents where Afghani police or soldiers have actually fired on NATO and British troops, American and British troops.
Well, they've got Harry there now, haven't they? So
well, they have.
Saves the day.
Yeah, but what this gentleman says is the danger to our soldiers is being prolonged by those on that front bench who have the power to stop it. Other countries have removed their soldiers from this dangerous area where they're not doing what we are doing, which is arming and training our future enemy. Very astute comments, I think. Yeah. Isn't this very similar to the end of the First World War, when it was said that politicians lied and soldiers died, and the reality was, as it is now, that our brave soldier lions are being led by ministerial donkeys. Now the point is that MPs are barred from calling other honourable members liars, but this very brave MP refused to withdraw his remarks, and he said, I have to insist on retaining my accusation of lying. That is far more important than a lying group of people who send our soldiers to die in vain in a war which we should withdraw and from which the country wants us to withdraw. I accept the consequences of what I'm saying.
I agree with him entirely. I think we should send him a UK column.
Well, I think it would be wonderful. Certainly the UK column will be happy to write a letter to this MP and congratulate him for his bravery and honesty in speaking out in Parliament. And isn't it significant that you speak the truth in Parliament and your reward is to be thrown out by a speaker who, in many media and press articles, has been found less than wanting?
Yeah.
So this really is starting to focus on the seriousness.
What constituency is he? Paul Flynn from?
Newport West,
Newport,
so South Wales, essentially. Now we can follow on from this with what the man was talking about. This is a Telegraph article again, where the Taliban are now claiming success in a policy to get in and obviously attack British and American soldiers in particular from behind. And he's now saying the fact that the British and American military have said that they will not do any more direct joint frontline operations with the Afghan forces. Sorry, with Afghan forces, means that the Taliban are claiming success. And of course, the fact this withdrawal has happened is actually saying that the policy of what's happening in Afghanistan is being mismanaged. And it adds total credence for what the Newport West MP has said. So something very nasty going on in Afghanistan at the moment, and our constant line on this is the war is being prolonged in order to divert the attention of the British and the American public to what is happening at home. So while those brave men and women are fighting and dying overseas, we have a treasonous Westminster which is attacking and dismantling the country.
And we still have an ex-Prime Minister and an ex-President walking around scot-free. Absolutely
true. We can follow up on this because at the same time that we've got troops fighting in the front line, what we've got is David Cameron and his Defence Secretary Philip Hammond, who are working to actually dismantle British Armed Forces. We'll explain a little bit more about this in a minute. But the article pushed out by the Express here is very simple, that civil servants are being given bonuses of 30 million. Yep. These are performance bonuses as thousands of army jobs are being cut. And of course, an ordinary person with common sense can say, well, actually, what is happening here? We know we've got major problems with defence procurement. We've got massive overrun costs on the major defence budgets. Yep. We've got massive cuts to the frontline troops, and we are paying bonuses to the people in the Ministry of Defence.
It has actually dropped a little bit because last year the officials shared 43 million bonus pot, right, and a spokesman said changes have been made, so this year's awards are smaller, with larger awards going to the top performing staff. And Phil Hammond is understood to have wanted to curb the bonuses but was constrained by existing agreements.
Yeah. If you take a cynical view, that's often a good thing to do, I think, with the present governments we have. But if we take a cynical view, we could suggest that perhaps the MOD officials are being paid so handsomely in order to do the dirty work of dismantling British Armed Forces. Yeah. So people who are interested, and we should all be interested in the defence of this country and the state of our military, we really need to focus on what this despicable man, Mr. Hammond, is doing with his colleagues Cameron and Clegg.
Shame we didn't have that for the show on Monday when we talked in depth about the military, really.
Well, the picture's building, I think.
Yeah, it is, definitely. We'll do another one.
That's over to you on this one,
Operation Elveden. It's more people that are being picked up by police. I'm just trying to find the article here. 50 people so far have been arrested with Operation Elveden, and Operation Elveden is investigating allegations of inappropriate payments to public officials by journalists. So last night, a 39-year-old serving officer with Wiltshire Police was arrested at his home, a 51-year-old journalist in Bristol, and another journalist in his house in London. And that now brings the total up to 50 people arrested for payments by journalists for information. So that's 50 now. Yep.
What's the comment on this? It's so interesting that we've got one brave MP who's talking about people lying in Parliament. That, yep, to me must be a particularly serious offence. Yeah. We've got the whole of the expenses scandals. We've got Tony Blair taking the country to war on lies. We see no real criminal prosecutions at all, but all of a sudden we can actually start arresting police officers, yep, who've been taking bungs. I'm not justifying the police officers doing that, but if we look at proportion and where the focus is, again, we're seeing it's one or two people at the bottom of the pile, yeah, who are the ones facing justice. Exactly. Meanwhile, the people at the top of the pile, including the international banks, get away with it.
And Leveson will obviously now come into this because it's payments for journalists and everything else, so more probably tighter restrictions anyway.
Well, that's absolutely true, and we're seeing some interesting things in the background with Leveson, the Media Standards Trust, and an organisation called Full Fact, which seems to now be increasingly connected with this drive to get the Media Standards Trust to take over control of the press. So I think the picture's coming togetgot on that one. Well, this is the second part of the border controls, isn't it, really?
Border controls, yeah. We've got our own very own bounty hunters. 170,000 immigrants are refused to leave Britain, and they're being tracked down by a private security firm, private security Capita, which is going to earn £40 million if it finds all the migrants identified by the UK Border Agency. The potential value of the contract, if they perform very well over a 4-year period, will be £40 million. Again, this is another private security firm getting involved with the government, you know, what the government should be doing. At the end of June, new documents showed the amount of people illegally here refusing to go, 174,057 people. Capita, which also provides services for government, including the Criminal Records Bureau's check, CRB, TV licences, declined to comment as the contract has not yet been signed. So UK border agencies have given this contract to a private security firm. And really, they don't even have to go and meet them. All they have to do is make contact either by telephone or by text message and a letter. And if they leave accordingly, Capita will get their great big bonus of 40-odd million.
Yeah, well, the point is that we've got private companies being let loose in a quasi-police investigative
we're just taking over roles that the police and the government people.
What accountability is there? What accountability has?
They're not even going to make actual contact. They're just going to send a text and letter to say you know you're being naughty. You've been here too long. Right. You have to leave now.
So really, we're seeing that basically again we're seeing an attack on the police effectively because roles which the police and special branch would do for national security are now being slipped across into the hands of private companies
with a nice paycheck.
This is corporatisation of the public service, but what is really happening in the background is communitarianism. This is the driving us into a dictatorship which has attributes of extreme left wing coupled with support for the global corporations. So the picture...
Oh, just to say, Serco did the trial run of this, and Capita, by the looks of it, has got the contract. So, I mean, it's the same names. You know, sure, G4S will have a little hand in it as well. So, G4S, Serco, and Capita. Okay.
Well, you picked up this lady,
I did pick up this lady. You know a lot more about her than what I do. But this lady is Baroness Ashton, and she is going to be the commander, if this goes ahead, of a single elected head of state of Europe and a new defence policy under control of a new pan-EU foreign ministry. So this lady's going to be in charge. It's for the future of Europe. And she basically wants one EU president and a EU army. And this lady has never actually been elected for any position that she's taken. But this plan, which has got the backing of Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Poland, Holland, Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Luxembourg and Portugal, is likely to fuel calls for British referendum on the membership of the EU. The document that's sweeping Europe at the moment has two of the people involved with this, Guido Westerwelle and Radek Sikorski, are foreign ministers of Germany and Poland, have said for Europe to be a truly stronger actor and a global leader, it needs strong institutional setup. It needs a direct elected president who personally appoints the members of the European government. Nigel Farage has obviously kicked off about this. Jose Manuel Barroso has said the EU should become a federation. Right. And Baroness Ashton is going to, she's commanding all this, apparently, in the statement here. EU Foreign Ministry commanded by Baroness Ashton. Well, and it'll eventually involve the European army. So that's exactly Agenda 21, the one world army. It's
part of it. It's the European system. But what we've got here is we've got a European Union which on one hand has created complete economic chaos. I think 17 years, may now be 18, but I think it's 17 years that we have not seen a single audited account from the European Union. We're pouring in billions of pounds. We have utter chaos in most of Europe. So we've got people now in Spain and Portugal and Italy on the breadline. We've got people in UK on the breadline. Utter chaos. And what's going on is that they are not admitting that the project is a failure. They're actually rushing up integration, and that of course is to get the whole of the member country, all of the member countries, locked into a European dictatorship, which is only to have one army, absolutely, or one military, effectively. So this is actually the reason why we're seeing this massive attack on the British Army and British Armed Forces, because in the background Cameron has already taken he's already signed the papers effectively to ensure that we as a nation state do not have our own armed forces.
Absolutely.
And that's what this lady's building.
Well, this lady, there's an interesting quote by a Radio 4's Today programme, Rod Liddle, and I quote what he says: "Never elected anywhere, by anyone, anywhere, totally unqualified for almost every job she has done. She has risen to her current position presumably through a combination of down-the-line Stalinist political correctness and the fact that she has charisma of a caravan site on the Isle of Sheppey."
Yeah, well,
so she's got a very nice reputation.
There's some serious stuff in there. Soviet, very interesting. We know that she's a left-winger. And also, if we call up a bit more comment from the internet, this is just a page from Google, but comment here where she's being called useless by a top French socialist, and failure in her role, serious disquiet. Now, my point on this is that this lady has been chosen because she's incompetent. You need somebody who's incompetent to come into one of these roles so that they can simply be treated as a puppet, and they will do what the people behind the scenes are telling them to do. So this woman is not deciding anything. What she's actually doing is spewing out the policy. But of course it's now becoming very clear where Europe is going, and as a nation, we need to start waking up to this. I think it's beginning to happen because it's become so obvious.
Absolutely.
But we've got a couple of things to show here. This is a document, and this is the sort of document that the Baroness will be peddling around. Common purpose towards a more effective OSCE. Now that's Organisation for the Security and Cooperation in Europe. This is an extremely interesting document. It's available on the internet, and if we have a look at what is actually being planned in the back of Europe, you will see that they are heading for a new security paradigm. So this is the content straight out of that common purpose document. They are strengthening unity of purpose and effectiveness. Essentially the whole thing is pulling Europe together in one political military bloc. And of course, what is going to be put in place with that is, and it's building very quickly, is the European police system, which effectively is going to be on the lines of the East German Stasi system. I'll just give one more shot of this. This is part of the introduction to the new security paradigm, but it's talking about not only the European but transatlantic and Eurasian dimensions. And there's a very interesting thing. The OSCE is the only regional organisation for cooperative security issues in which states from Vancouver to Vladivostok participate on equal terms. So in the background, while we think that we're in a very precarious world position at the moment with posturing between the Americans, Russians and the Chinese, what is actually going on within Europe is that there is free dialogue, not only across the former Eastern European states, but also into the so-called former Soviet Union.
Yeah. And
we know that under the One World Government programme, Europe, including Russia and Africa, is to form one power bloc. Just Google that document.
I'm doing it now. I'm just going to put it in the chat box, actually. I've just found it because people are asking for it in the chat box. So I'm just
okay. And of course, the name on the cover says it all, common purpose.
Yeah.
Right, the next one we move on to, and it's over to Mike, if you're there in the background, Mike.
Right, well, this is a follow-up to yesterday's story of Professor Lisa Jardine and her 3-person IVF consultation, where she was talking about the need for genetically modified IVF treatment to prevent diseases in humans, and I was just suggesting that, bearing in mind there's a policy of population reduction coming from the same kind of people that we've been talking about just now, that it seems that there may be, or it seems to me that there may be an alternative explanation as to why they want to start genetic modification of embryos. what I wanted to cover today was a report from the OECD discussing the use of food products for biofuels, and really this push for biofuels from food is a direct attack on populations globally, in my opinion, so what the OECD was saying was that 14% in the next couple of years, 14% of the world's corn, 16% of the world's vegetable oils, and 34% of sugarcane will be used for production of biofuels as a result of the green agenda, which we know is also very closely tied to the population control agenda. Now, yesterday, I believe it was, Oxfam came out with a report called The Hunger Games. And what Oxfam said was, it's time to scrap... Oh, sorry. It's time to scrap EU biofuel mandates. If the land used to provide biofuels for the EU in 2008 had been used to produce wheat and maize instead, it would have fed 127 million people for the entire year. It is completely unacceptable that we are burning fuel in our petrol tanks while poor families go hungry. And then today, The Guardian has come out in its global development section saying that campaigners welcome the EU plan to limit crop-based biofuels for transport. Now, what the EU is saying is that they will limit the amount of crops in Europe that can be used for biofuels to 5%. But what they're not doing is placing any limit on any kind of crops which are used for non-human consumption. So, for example, animal feed. There will still be no limit on the amount of the quantity of that kind of material that can be used for biofuels. And you'll notice, by the way, that two things about this particular page. One is that The Guardian has this section called Global Development, and really what is mainly being pushed in this section of The Guardian is the Green Agenda, which makes that title a bit ironic because, of course, we're not talking about development of the third world. We're talking about keeping the third world in the Stone Age. But you'll also notice that this particular section of The Guardian is supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we know what their views are on world population. Yeah. So the key thing about using biofuels using crops for biofuels is that diverting food production into that kind of area, particularly in a year like this where we've seen significant reduction in harvests as a result of both drought and floods, depending on which part of the world you're in. It is an insane policy, and it will impact the Horn of Africa. It will, and you've got to say, you know, when was Live Aid? 1980s, 85, right? So nothing has changed. These same areas of the world are still suffering the same problems that they've been suffering for forever. There is no development going on in these countries. It is a globalist policy that there will be no development in these countries. And while we cannot afford to feed these people, or we don't produce enough to feed these people, we're still diverting food into this kind of, it's insane. And
well, Mike will say it's not insane. This is deliberate policy. This is the key thing for viewers and listeners. Deliberate policy.
Yeah, it is deliberate policy, but I still think it's insane.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that.
Thanks,
well,
Mike.
On the subject of reducing populations, it's over to you and vaccines.
I didn't bring it up yesterday. There's been a new study by the Centre for Disease Control. The number of vaccines that are given to children has increased more than 3 times in the last 29 years. In 1983, children were given 10 shots from birth to 6 years of age, compared to the 36 to 38 for the same age group in 2012. This is in the States, but I mean, it does fluctuate. You know, it does come
here
affect us here. Health experts are saying, you know, all it needs is immune boosting alternatives other than these vaccines, including eating organic food, increasing vitamin D, avoiding GMO foods, additives and preservatives. But vaccines can carry with them serious side effects ranging from mild complications like fevers to more serious side effects such as autism, seizures and even death in some cases. But the CDC has basically said the vaccinated children actually become more ill than the non-vaccinated children, that there is absolutely no health benefit really to some of these vaccinations. And bearing in mind that heavy metals are also being injected, which we know can cause problems with the mind, such as autism. Asperger's is on the rise as well. Yeah, well, we know that a lot of people connecting it with vaccines.
Yeah, we know that in some South Wales schools, 25 to 30% of the youngsters have got some form of special need as a result of these type of physical mental problems.
ADHD is on the rise as well, and
so
really
we're not being told the truth.
We're not being told the truth. It's not out there in the press. When people do try and say their websites are getting taken down, as we covered recently. Yeah. So people are thinking about vaccinating their children, just do a little bit of research. Right. Please.
And as always, with an eye on the clock, we're slightly overrunning. For viewers and listeners who are thinking, what do we do about this? We come back, as we always do, and say, talk about it. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, speak to as many people as you can. What we need is exposure of what the true agenda politics at the moment, what it is. And if you'd like to know what the UK column view is on what's happening at the moment, we have a very dangerous political elite in power. They are prepared to conduct criminal activities. We're seeing this overseas in Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq. But at home, we've also got a British public which is under attack from really our own government.
Well, and the thing is, our own government really have just been appointed by the people a bit higher up.
The bankers.
The bankers and the corporations.
Okay, so speak out, tell a friend, and spread the word. Okay, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.